Yeah.
We're here on the Cartoon Chronicles podcast. We're here with Eric, man. We're gonna take it all the way back to when you broke into SpongeBob, man. So how do you go from doing what you were doing to getting on SpongeBob?
Uh, alright, Plankton. I can't do my job without that formula. And when I can't do my job, I get mad. Real mad. Oh, sorry about that. You guys have a recycling bin for this one? No? Okay, I'll just hang on to it and throw it away later.
Sure, sure. I had a buddy, Kurt Dumas, fantastic board artist and director. He does stuff like American Dad and everything. And he knew Derek Drymon. They went back to like when they were interns at Disney Feature Animation. And Derek had told Kurt that they were looking for a character designer or somebody that does model sheets for SpongeBoy Ahoy. That's what it was called at the time. And so they had seen my animation. I was over at Spumco doing the Bjork music video, and then I did a Nike commercial. And I was rapping. I was like, I'm ready to do something else. And so it was perfect timing. I met those guys. And, I am, we talked about this earlier, I'm really into tiki culture. I love it. I
Mhm.
grew up in tiki, land. Growing up, I went to Don the Beachcomber in Malibu, and there was another one, I think that was in Hollywood. And then I would also go to Kelbo's a lot. So that whole world, I loved it. And when I was being told what it was, like I think even before I saw it, when they said it's about a sponge underwater, and it's got all these like floral prints, and I was like, I'm in, I'm totally in. And then when I met with Steve and I saw, some of the artwork and the concept stuff, there was like no hesitation. I was like, yeah, I'm in. And my job was to take all of his awesome drawings that were like very rough and start making model sheets and turnarounds, not only of SpongeBob, but of all the characters. And then start doing a lot of early expressions for it. And then doing all of the mouth charts with Alan Smart, also tiki culture guy.
Mhm.
It was like a lot of surfers. Steve was a marine biologist and a surfer as well. So California guy, it seems like all of us were except for Jack Tryman. He's New Jersey. And yeah, that's how it started. I was Steve Hillenberg's first hire, and then immediately after, I think about like a week or two after, it was Kenny Pittenger, and who's an EP on the Patrick Star show.
Mhm.
And we just it was like we all fit. It was great. We all liked the same music. We were all into punk and just weird, experimental movies and art, and also just like ridiculous humor. And Kenny is super funny, and all those guys were. And yeah, it was such a wonderful time. I mean, that's how I first got in. And we were at a office building where we were on the bottom floor, and the rest of it was a nursing school. And Nickelodeon still wasn't in like a big building. We were kind of like all over the San Fernando Valley. And we didn't have an office. They put us in a conference room. And so it was Derek, Steve, myself, and Kenny Pittenger. And, I got to watch them work in a different way than, you did at Disney Feature and whatnot. But Steve was not done with the storyboard for SpongeBob. He was still, I'd say, about halfway. And the way he was doing it was on these yellow post-it notes that were like at that time like the size of the TV, like not rectangular. And I would see him on the table. He would do a drawing and he would maybe move it over and do sort of like a Tetris with it. He was sort of doing a game. And I'd never seen that. And I thought that was really cool. There's something freeing about the post-it note that don't have anymore. And
Was
and
it
then
yellow? Was it
it was
yellow?
that beautiful yellow
Yeah.
post-it note that like you can't find anywhere. I recently, so we were in the Altadena fires and we were displaced for a while for like five
Mhm.
months. And my Cintiq during the evacuation it broke, so I had
Mhm.
to wait for some cords and try to weld it together. Anyway, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go get these post-it notes. I miss it.
Yeah.
I was mobile that way. Those post-it notes that were that specific size are gone. They don't
Yeah.
make it anymore. And I'm just like, oh man, like it was so nice to draw. Like you can just, and it's not like any other paper, like a sketchbook. There's something specific about those post-it notes and the way your pencil would just like carve into it with a nice 2B general. And you're like, oh, that is nice.
Have you tried
So like,
eBay?
no, I haven't. I
No.
should try it.
Yeah.
I should totally try. You find everything in eBay. In fact, the parts for my Cintiq I found on eBay. All right, but stay on plot. Yeah, I'm just watching him do it, and working with Steve and Derek and Alan doing these turnarounds, and I wasn't quite getting it at first. I still had some of that Spunko stuff in me. And Steve, I think, was still like trying to figure out how to communicate with me. But Derek was sort of the conduit. And, and Derek and we've had that relationship ever since. Hey, Derek. And yeah, so then I switched over and I realized that, SpongeBob really is Steve Hillenburg.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild. Yeah. The way he walks, just those big eyes, big blue eyes, and these long eyelashes, and that smile that Steve had, he was just always like, you know. And when Steve would look at something, like to look at something, he would just sort of go, like it's almost like his whole body would shift.
He
And
had
then at
Batman
times,
neck.
yeah, kind of. And that's sort of what SpongeBob is. It's like you would get into an elevator and someone's speaking, he would sort of turn to look at you, and you're like, whoa, that's wild. And SpongeBob's walk is like that too, and it was just great figuring out like Mr. Krabs' walk, having that conversation. And it was just like, what if it was just a four frame multi-blur, cycle? And I tried it. And I was actually, what popped into my head at that time was a pup named Scooby-Doo.
I love that.
And Velma had that walk. And
Oh, the legs. Yeah.
yeah. So that's where that came. I was just like, oh, let's just do that. Like that'll be
I never
cool,
put two and two together. That's such a. Were you watching it one day, or did you like? How does that even come about? Were you just
I
watching
loved
cartoons
that
one day?
show. I loved that show when I was a kid. It was always, Pee-wee's Playhouse, and then it would
Hmm.
be Mighty Mouse, and then it would be a pup named Scooby-Doo. I think that was like the CBS lineup.
Hmm.
That was where it was. And I thought that show had really good animation. I
Dude, it
thought
was
they were
so
doing a
fun.
great, yeah, yeah, it was good. And some of those jokes were great, and it was yeah, I think with the main Scooby Doo, it's locked into a certain look, and
Hmm.
and I think it's got a lot of like these great takes and everything. But a pup named Scooby Doo just would do some wild stuff, and it did have a little bit of that like early. I don't want to say John Kay, but like something like that. I mean, there was a
Yeah,
cartooniness to it that was really cool, and the colors were rich. They weren't
muted.
overly saturated.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's like everything right now. It's just like how much can we turn up the saturation? And it was great. I think part of that too is it's analog. It was all film and whatever the exposure was. But anyway, again, to stay on plot, that's where that came from. The little four frame, and I did that with Alan. And the other thing too is, we don't have Cintiqs, and I was doing this on animation paper and flipping those drawings, and you have the pencil test machine and you shoot it, and then it's like, great, that's what it is. Let's make it a model sheet, and we would see that loop all the time. So that's what happened. With Squidward, I actually did something really complicated first, where I wanted to have like his legs do this very like octopusy kind of
Hmm.
thing, and we did it, and I liked it. I don't know if I have it anywhere. But yeah, it's too complicated, and that was one of those lessons of getting into television, because I wasn't really doing television. I wanted to be like a Disney animator or Warner
Hmm.
Brothers animator. So that was me learning how to work within that pipeline. With TV, they give you this lane. It's a wide
Hmm.
lane, but nevertheless, it's not a huge lane like with feature. And you start to go, okay, these are the rules, and you have to work within those rules. And that's what was happening with Squidward. Um, yeah, yeah, I think it was such a honor and a privilege to work on that, on the pilot. And I'll tell you one other story. Um, he hadn't cast the voices yet.
Hmm.
And
How
he was
early is this
talking.
into production, by the way?
Oh, he hadn't even finished the storyboard.
Okay.
He was, yeah, we were in there, and um, Derek would come in at like 6 a.m. because he was doing cat dog like, at
Hmm.
9:30 or 10. So he'd come in really early, and we would come in and he was there at like 6 a.m. also working on storyboards, and then he'd pitch to Steve, and good, they'd go through it. Man, what a team! Those two were such a great team. And he'd put it on the wall, and he'd show me, he'd show Kenny, and we'd see the progress. And he was not afraid to go, oh, I'd have something better here if I just started over here, and that freaked me out. And I was like, that is really cool. And he would just go back and forth and do that back and forth. So yeah, he was a little bit more than halfway when he was, trying to get voice actors, and we talk about it. And he had a good feeling about Tom Kenny.
Hmm.
And Tom, I'm sitting there drawing, and the door's behind me, and people are kind of coming in and they're looking at it. And actually, there would be some people who were taking tours of Nickelodeon, like other big name artists and other executives. And, they'd introduce Steve to him, and they'd look at what he's doing. And there was always this attitude of like, all right, well, yeah, sponge underwater. Good luck with that. And they'd leave and would be like, what an asshole. Like, who is this guy? Like, and we had a few of those. I'm not going to name names, but it was just like,
What do they rhyme with? What do their names rhyme with?
no, no. But, and that was even more motivation, I think, to sort of go, oh,
Hmm.
can you still hear me? Because I just cut out.
Oh
You
yeah,
can
I
hear
can
me
hear you.
okay? All
Yes,
right.
sir.
Um, yeah, I mean, that was also more motivation. I think, there was still that punk rock
Hmm.
thing going on, and then, yeah, Tom Kenny walked in, and he's pitching the board to Tom. And as he's doing it, Tom would start to also say some of the lines because, the dialogue's right there. And then I'd say within like 10 or 20 seconds, we heard SpongeBob. And I just remember
Yeah.
like turning around to like watch this unfold. And then it was like, okay, let me try. So then he would do the lines. And I just remember Steve like looking at me, and I looked at him, and it was just like, that's it. I think Kenny was there too, if I remember correctly, Kenny Pittenger. Um, and then he did the laugh. He
Yeah.
did he did the laugh for the first time, and it's just like I got chills right now. And it was like, oh man. And then he left, and Steve was like, that's it. Like that's it. It's Tom Kenny. It was great.
when when you're doing this and you guys are working on something, there's no voice actors been cast. And I don't know like how many productions you've worked on where they haven't really got a voice in mind as far as like an actor coming in yet. But like what voices are you this is gonna make me sound like I'm asking you how psychotic you are. What voices are you hearing in your head when you're creating these characters and help flesh out these ideas? You're putting a piece of yourself in there, I'm sure, and you're trying to take what Steven wants and what Derek's doing and all this, and you're trying to make this amalgamation to make it great. But like,
Right.
do you remember? And I know this is a long time ago, so it's probably hard to remember. But do you remember what SpongeBob sounded like to you before Tom Kenny did?
I was such a Jerry Lewis and Pee Wee
Oh,
fan, and yeah, yeah. El Chavo de Ocho, which is like a Mexican show that I also
mhm,
watched when I was a kid. And they all kind of have that similar man-child voice,
mhm.
So yeah, I was in there, and we talked about Jerry Lewis like all the time. The bellboy was like our favorite Jerry Lewis, and
Write that down.
he's very SpongeBob. And of course, Laurel and Hardy was a
Mhm.
big thing for Steve. I wasn't that big into Laurel and Hardy at the time. I was still very much like a Buster Keaton freak, still am. Pardon me. But yeah, like that was it's almost I would consider The Bellboy like almost a surrealist film.
Mhm.
It's so weird, and there's some great jokes. And I think that's also why there's a lot of surrealism in SpongeBob, But going back to your question about the voices, that was all Steve. Like my input on that, it was just, hey, I was a newbie. I was like in my early 20s. I already knew like this is a great show. It's super funny. It's the tiki culture and the surf culture, and I'm in it. But I got to hear the conversations. I got to hear
Mhm.
that with Steve and Derek. And then there was one conversation. I think I don't know if he was saying, like like Pee Wee or like Jerry Lewis or like um, that never happened in that conversation. But with Patrick, we loved the show Coach, and
Okay.
we love yeah, and he was like that guy, that tall guy, like that's Patrick. And same thing, he came in, and when you see him in real life, he's tall,
Hmm.
and he comes in, and he's nothing like Patrick at all. He comes in and he sees it, and he did the exact same thing that Tom did, and when he needed to do his voice, it was just like, there it is, that's it, that's the guy. Roger was a bit more difficult to find. Roger, I think he went through quite a few, and then one day he came back just going, I found him. I found him. And he's kind of like him. And that's the other thing with casting, by the way. Tom is a lot like SpongeBob.
Hmm.
He
Super
really is.
optimistic.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, when you're casting, it's like you're also looking for that person who kind of is that person. That's what casting is. And so that's one part of it. Yeah, I mean, with me, I ran the Mighty Bee, and from the very beginning, it was Amy Poehler, and we
Hmm.
had heard her do the, Andy's little sister and her Girl Scout thing, so we already kind of knew, what that was. And then some of the other characters, you have an idea, and some you don't, and you just kind of need to, dig into it and figure out, oh, what's really calling to you. And sometimes you'll hear a voice and then you go, it's going to change the way I'm going to design something. I don't know a ton of feature people, but the ones I do, I've heard the conversations of like, oh, well, as soon as like they said Robin Williams, like we needed to get some of that stuff in there, and they will, get some of those caricatures of a character in there, but I've never had that experience. So I think it's all over the place. Just like when you're painting, it's just constantly changing. You're finding stuff until you feel like, oh, everything is working this way. I hope that made sense. I hope I answered
Oh,
your question.
no, you did because it's just so fascinating because I've used this analogy quite a few times. So, ladies and gentlemen, I apologize. But whenever I read my Batman comics, when I go and get them every month, the voice I hear for Batman is Kevin Conroy. The voice I hear for Joker is Mark Hamill. When I read my Ninja Turtle comics, because those are the ones I go to more than anything else when it comes to the comic book store, I'm going there for my Ninja Turtle comics.
Yeah,
And the voices that I hear when I'm reading these characters
yeah,
are from that first '90s movie, the Jim
yeah,
Henson production, the first one with the suits. I hear Raph, I hear Leo, and I hear them just like they're in the movie, but I hear them in my head. So I've always been fascinated when you guys are working with something, you guys don't have a voice yet. I've always been curious of like, what do you guys hear? Is something inspiring? And then if a show like or if a film like Bellboy with Jerry Lewis, does that kind of influence you to make him do things that Jerry Lewis might
yeah,
do? You know what I mean? So it's
yeah.
just fascinating how life kind of imitates art and art imitates life and what you guys, what's the word I'm looking for? Get
The
inspired by and try to,
inspiration.
yeah,
Yeah,
to put it in your
yeah.
art form. Now, with this one in particular, man, I remember a world before SpongeBob. I remember a world before Harry Potter. I'm trying to think of the other one that I was just thinking because me and my friends were just thinking about all of these things that are massive now that my kids were
Right. The
born and they were
lexicon.
already
Yeah.
here, right?
Right.
But these two in particular, I remember quite vividly. And I've told the story about when we went to Universal when I was really young, right before my dad went to prison, or maybe it was after. I can't remember. It's just so long ago. But we went into this place, and it was before like I don't know if animation was still out here. Nickelodeon Studios was still around out here, is where they were doing like all that and a lot of those shows and stuff. They were still producing them
Right.
out
All
here.
the live action stuff. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and I remember going through the ticket counter when you walk in and they go, "Hey, we're rolling out this new show." And they didn't tell us what it was, and if they did, I'm like, fuck, maybe six or something like that. I don't remember too much, but I remember I wanted to be an artist back then, and
Hmm.
I would just draw and draw and draw and draw. And I remember going into this thing, and then this lady was giving us a tour, and I don't even know if he was a part of the production or if he was just down there drawing. I can't remember
Hmm.
what it was, but I
Yeah.
remember them talking about this is the new show that we're going to be working on, SpongeBob, right? And I remember this one lone artist, and whether he was an artist there on production or not, I don't know, but he would
Yeah.
draw something and then he'd crumble it up. And I remember looking at the waste paper basket next to him, and it was just covered. like full brim over, the paper on the ground. And I remember asking like, why does he keep tearing it down and throwing it away? And she goes, oh, if it's not right, he has to start over. And I go, oh, this is a tedious job. You know what I mean? So it's just like, it's fascinating to hear these stories. And like I said, before we had to re-record the intro before the internet went out here on my side, we had talked about, SpongeBob kind of being this introduction into my Nickelodeon. Like I can remember SpongeBob, right? Hey Arnold is kind of what brought me onto Nickelodeon, but I remember SpongeBob. And what I love about today's day and age with streaming now, what I love and what I
Mhm.
hate with streaming is you can find anything. But
Mhm.
it's also goes by the seat of somebody else's pants, man, because they could just choose. I don't want to carry this. I don't want to pay for this IP anymore. And it just drops. And then if you don't
Right.
have it on physical media, you're never going to get it again, right? So I'm watching the Amazon Prime channel thing that they have over here, and I sound so old saying it like that, but SpongeBob comes up, and I was like, man, they got the whole series on Amazon. So I put on the pilot, and my oldest son had already seen it, but my two littles haven't, and I was
Yeah.
curious of a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I was wondering, I was like, oh, I wonder if they're going to go for this, and we watched the two-parter for the pilot, the leaf blower, and I can't remember what the fucking
The
SpongeBob's
bubble.
first day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
SpongeBob's first day. And I just look over my 4-year-old, my 2-year-old, and they're laughing. And I'm
Great.
going, oh my God, this is transcendent. This goes past generations. It doesn't matter because they're all into Paw Patrol. We love Sesame Street. We love a whole bunch of that stuff. But it was SpongeBob they were laughing at. And I go, man, I wonder if that's what I was doing when I was their age or when I was a
Yeah.
little bit younger. Did I look at it
Yeah.
like that? So you guys did a fantastic job. That first season for sure. That pilot is one of those. And like I said, I haven't done too much SpongeBob talk, but that show, there's a
Yeah.
reason it's still what, 26 years in, 27 years in. It's
That's
still
also
going. It's
the
got legs.
genius of Hillenberg,
Yeah.
Hillenberg and Dryman. Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
What's your favorite
it,
Steven story? When you think of that guy, and I've asked a couple people on, and it usually people get a little teary eyed because unfortunately he's no longer here, man. But
yeah.
like whenever you hear his name, is there a story or a moment you had? Maybe you guys were out to lunch or anything like that that comes up?
Yeah. I won't tell a story because I'll just start bawling.
It's okay. We can cry together later.
The one that I told you is probably, it is one of my favorites to have
Yeah.
witnessed over just 2 months the birth of SpongeBob and
Hmm.
that moment when Tom Kenny came in and just seeing Steve light up when
Yeah.
Tom did that laugh. I mean, that's a special moment. And knowing, what it's become, you
Hmm.
know, knowing what it's become, was pretty great, you know. And I learned a lot from them. There was a lot of hard times. There's a lot of great times. That's the thing with production too. Even working with Gendy, there's a lot of great times and there's a lot of hard times. That's like, with a lot of,
Anything. Yeah.
anything. Yeah, a lot of shows. Um, and that's how you learn, I think that things are different nowadays. It's like you can't be like as demanding as you used to be, but like they would sit down, they'd say, get up off your chair and go like, here, let me show you what it is that I want, or even like, drawing style or go like, my staging is like this. This is, how I like the things and how I like pans and, all of these stuff, you don't think about it. You start to pick it up from different people,
Hmm.
different artists. And, like Tucker, we were talking about him earlier, and he's got a lot of great techniques. And same thing with Mark O'Hare, and also watching them draw, or going to figure drawing class and watching your instructor draw, and you go, oh, you're picking, in a way they're magic tricks, you know.
Hmm.
And you just try to add it to your bag of tricks, and it helps your career around. And there's some times where it doesn't go well, and the instructor is like, you know, John Kay was one of those. Like, where he's just like, get up. What is this shit? Like, let
Yeah.
me show you how to draw. And you freak out a little bit. And there's other artists like that too. I heard stories about Milk Hall
Hmm.
being a bit of a bear, also.
Yeah.
And it's like, get up. Let me show you how to draw. You think you can draw? Like, this isn't a drawing. And there's some of those sort of things. And that's what happens. There's a lot of highs and lows, but there's a lot more highs, and I have great, great memories of working with Derek and Steve, and I'm still working with Derek.
That's
He
so
just
cool,
finished.
man.
He just wrapped on the latest SpongeBob 4, and there was actually a lot of the original guys there, and there was some weird moments where, my first 2 weeks back, and I hadn't drawn SpongeBob in a long time, and I was sort of sitting there going like, wow, that's Steve on the page, and you're trying to. It's like he lives there, and talking to Derek and Aaron Springer and Mark O'Hare. They're like, yeah, it was weird at first, and then I don't know, maybe I should. This is too personal, but it's like you sort of go, yeah, like this is his kid,
Yeah.
and we got to make sure that this movie is great, for Steve.
Dude, it's so dope, man. I love hearing stories like this because, everybody knows who SpongeBob is. Very rarely do people know the people that helped bring him to life, right? It started with Steven, and then it farmed
Yeah,
out to you, and then Derek, and then all the names you mentioned, and it really takes a village to raise a kid, but it also takes a village to raise an animated series from the ground up. And like I said, the fact that it's still going 26 years later is, or
yeah,
27, I think it's 27 now. I can't remember. I
yeah.
didn't do too well in math, ladies and gentlemen.
I forgot.
Um,
I stopped
yeah.
counting.
Yeah, once you hit double digits, you're like, you're good. You get carte blanche,
Yeah,
right?
I
Now,
don't even remember my age, so.
it's a good thing. I know I turned 36 in a couple weeks. That's about all, that's the only thing I can really remember. But the last thing I wanted to talk about was SpongeBob before we move on next. And I'm glad you brought up Aaron Springer because there's two people in particular I want to talk about when we talk about Samurai Jack. Because both Aaron Springer and Chris Riccardi have my favorite Samurai Jack episode of all time,
Yeah.
Chicken Jack.
Oh
And
man.
I don't want to make you cry, but I do want to ask you some stories about Chris.
Sure.
But with that being said, obviously SpongeBob being your first like real like, oh shit, I'm in the animation industry. This is TV animation, right? Is there something that you learned on SpongeBob, whether it was from Steven or Derek or anybody else, that you still might use in your career, you still might draw reference from today?
Yeah. Oh yeah. The way we would work, we were in a room. This is not a big office, and
Hmm.
this is actually like the size that Aaron and I would work in. And it was like wall one is act one, wall two and a half was act two. And
Hmm.
then, act three was that last one about halfway. And Steve and Derek and Aaron also, they would just draw an entire sequence within just a few hours. And we
Hmm.
would pitch it. And then, Derek would be like, yeah, I like this, but this whole thing, like, take it down.
Hmm.
And, I wanted to be an animator. And the thought of that was just like, are you kidding me? Those are drawings. Like you're not throwing those away. Like that was really hard.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to hear that whole thing of like, you got to kill your babies.
Hmm. Can't be
Like
too
it
precious.
can't be too precious. And
Yeah.
you're going through it. And also I was really hung up on doing more like tighter drawings.
Hmm.
And it did get to a point of like, who could draw? Like, if there was an idea and we're all for drawing, usually Derek always won. Like,
Yeah.
who could get that drawing out the fastest? And you would put up and you're like, what's that drawing? Being an animator, I'm like, we call that a drawing, And then you see, Aaron's and it's also super fast, but it didn't matter. Like, what mattered was the story.
Hmm.
What mattered was these boards that were telling something because after the 3 weeks, when the story is approved, then you get to go ahead and do all the clean drawings. But I was still sort of stuck in that. And it took a long time for me to actually get out of that. I think it was, I wanted to be a comic book artist. That was another thing. And then I went to Disney Feature and I started in cleanup. And,
Hmm.
if you do 5 drawings in one day that are a clean line and everything's articulated clearly, like great. And so that kind of stuck with me for a really long time. And then as my career continued as a storyboard artist, if I were to show you the Sonic boards, they're just like a ball and two eyes and like stick figures. Like it just doesn't matter. And so that's something that I really learned. And also having those conversations about comedy with Steve and Derek and
Hmm.
dude, Aaron's just a god. He's the funniest guy. He's the funniest guy I know.
Yeah.
And he takes it from some magical place. And I learned a lot from those guys, about comedy and storyboarding and running a show, running a production. Steve, I was also lucky to have Steve and Derek because they ran a show and you love them. I've
Hmm.
been on shows with a showrunner and you're like, oh
Can't wait to get this one over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And with this, it was just every time going back was a pleasure. Yeah.
Well, that's dope to hear because watching that as a kid, I was fascinated. Watching it as an adult, I was not so much that I was surprised because I knew even back then, like I knew there was stuff that was going to go over my head. You know what I mean? As a little kid,
Uh-huh.
there's some stuff you slide in, and
Bugs
that's with every single
Bunny.
show.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely,
yeah,
every
yeah.
show, because you guys knew that it wasn't just the kids that were going to watch this. You wanted to get the parents in there too, right? You needed to throw some stuff in there so they could laugh or watch it with their kids, and be like, God, I can't wait for the show to be over. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
like I said, it's just looking back on that show now as an adult. I say this so often. I say it more so with Samurai Jack than any other show. I could not have appreciated this, as a kid, like I appreciate it now. But watching it as an adult, watching it with my kids, and then more so watching it through their eyes and watching it with them, I have such a fascination and joy for that character that I don't think I could articulate very well, man. But you guys crushed SpongeBob, man. It was an absolute blast to watch this one, and any
He's
iteration
a
I love seeing.
character that told you what needed to happen. That's the other
Yeah.
thing. I think that's the other gift with SpongeBob is that like you really know who he is and he informed where you were gonna go. Really quick, I just want to say something about the doing things for adults.
Hmm.
That really wasn't totally on our like we weren't being intentional about that. We were trying to make ourselves laugh.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about that show too was like how silly can we get? That
Hmm.
was one of the things for us. And I think there was also this thing of like, it's silly. It's just a silly show,
Yeah.
but we loved stupid jokes that are smart, stupid jokes. And so we would laugh about that stuff. I don't feel like we were ever sitting there going like, well, we got to come up with a joke for an adult you
Hmm.
know I think that just sort of happened naturally because we were just big kids.
Yeah.
We were just big kids, and I think with SpongeBob, the other half of that too is that, it's a kid's fantasy of what life would be like as an adult, you know,
Hmm.
without parents. And so you get to do some of those things of like, what does a kid think an adult is? And
Hmm.
so we laugh at that because we also wondered about that. We played adults when we were kids, right? Like, I think
I'm still
that's
playing an adult.
me too. Me too. Yeah. So I think that's what that was. I get asked that a lot, what you
Yeah.
just said too, of like, you're sneaking in that thing for the adults, and you're kind of like, not really.
Well,
We were
makes
just trying
sense.
to
You're
make
trying to make
ourselves
each other
laugh.
laugh. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So an adult and adult
Yeah.
humor, like, oh man, the little kid might not laugh at this one, but like I'm gonna get Steve over here. I'm gonna make him laugh. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, I don't think I've ever shared this before. So when I went through boot camp, they beat you down in the Navy, and then your
Yeah.
go-to thing is they would ask you, "Are you ready?" or "Ready?" And then you'd always have to say, "Always ready," right? So there
Uh-huh.
was a moment in boot camp where I tried to do SpongeBob, and anybody that's listening that thinks that boot camp is the time to be the funny guy, just know I got put on my face. I had to do push-ups. I had to do 8 counts. I had to do sit-ups. And I ended up, this is going to be a little TMI, but I ended up vomiting, right? And usually they would leave you alone
Even
after you
better.
vomit, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And they were like, come on, say you're ready like SpongeBob again as I'm doing push-ups over my vomit. So
That's a
SpongeBob
great
went to
story.
boot camp.
Yeah, I want to see that directed by Stanley Kubrick. Like, I just want to see Lee Army upset with you. And then what would be good is if you just kept doing SpongeBob and make fun of
Yeah.
that. What? Wow, what a story. Is it,
Yeah.
let me ask you something. Was it kind of like Full Metal Jacket? Like,
No, so
was
I
it
was I was
hardcore?
in the no, I was in the Navy. Like, so I'm 19, I think 18, 19 when I go in. And it was a complete I didn't want to join the military at all. I had no aspiration. I wanted to cook as soon as I came out of high school. But I graduated in 2008. What happened in 2008? The housing market crashed. I had a job that I
Mm-hmm.
was getting paid very well to do absolutely nothing, and I thought I was
Mm-hmm.
going to go to culinary school. And
Mm-hmm.
then that dried up really quick. I got engaged, or excuse me, I started dating my now wife. We've been together for fuck 16, 17 years now. 17 years together, I believe. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, math, not my strong suit. So I go there, and then I was expecting it to be like Full Metal Jacket. I was expecting it to be kind of like Forrest Gump when he's just yelling, and all that other
Right.
stuff. And there was a lot of that. But it wasn't, your mind has this perception to make things worse than they actually are. That
Yeah.
way, I guess, so it can like be, you can be kind of okay with the outcome. If that makes any kind of sense whatsoever,
Makes
right? Your
perfect
mind
sense.
always goes to the worst, right?
Yeah.
And you get there and it's a culture shock instantly, right? Because they do tear you down because at the end of the day, whether you go into any military force, go in for war or you're going in for support, oops, or you're going in for whatever, you have to be able to know that you give this one person a command and they're going to follow it, good, bad, or indifferent, as bad as that
Mhm.
sounds, blindly, because you don't have the time for, oh, hey, you don't have time for that because that split second could be the death of one person or 100 people, right? So that was the one thing, because I've always had a thing about authority figures. I've just never been good at people screaming and yelling at me. Like, it's not like I break down or
Who
anything like
is?
that.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
shit, I've met some people that they like it. I mean, I'm pretty sure my oldest son likes it. Uh, it's just, that's a whole nother story for a whole nother time. But it's just, I was expecting it to be a lot worse than it was. There was some very hard times. The first mess up I ever did, because I played basketball since I was from 6 years old all the way until fucking 22, 23 before I broke my ankle the second time. So I was used to talking to my coach, and I would always call my coach, right? So I get into boot camp and I'm getting screamed at, and he's like, "Do you understand me, Seaman Recruit Hester?" And I was like, "Yes, coach, I do." And I go, "Oh shit, I meant to say chief." And he was like, "Coach." I'm your coach. You mean life coach? Am I your basketball coach or your baseball coach? What kind of coach am I? And as he's saying coach, he just keeps getting closer and closer and closer to my face. And then we're nose to nose. And this guy, I had mentioned Forrest Gump. He reminded me, his name, I don't know his first name, but his last name was Bays. He was GMC, which is a gunner's mate, Chief Bays. He was a very small Major Payne, looked exactly like Damon Wayans from Major Payne. And he walked and he talked, and he was just this character. And then I'm 6'2", almost 6'3" on a good day when my spine's not compressed. And this guy was maybe 5'8". And to
Oh,
have somebody looking up at you and you have to look down at them while he's yelling at you
and he's
was never
intimidating.
a fun. Oh man, for a little
Yeah.
guy, he was he had big guy energy for sure, but yeah, nothing like Full Metal Jacket. There was some crazy things that'll happen that I'll tell you off air.
You're probably going to need to cut this because if he
Oh
ever
yeah.
sees this, he's going to come and find you.
He'll be. What's crazy? What's crazy is my first command was his last command before coming to do the whole boot camp pushing thing for the division commanders and the RDCs. Which so it was crazy. So I tell him who my I check into my first command, the USS Emirates Land, and then he goes, Where'd you come from?" And I was like, "Oh, I was in this division." He was like, "Any chance you had a gunner's mate base?" And I was like, "Yeah, he was my RDC." He was like, "That was my best friend." And I was like, "No way. There's no way that that happened." He was like, "Yeah, he was a GM1 here. He made chief and he went to go push boots." And I was like, This is wild to think about it like that, right?" But great experience. I wish I could have like appreciated a little bit more while I was in. I was just missing my
Yeah.
wife and I was missing my son. I was deployed for the first
Yeah.
4 years of my son's life. You know what I mean? So
Wow,
first words, first
dude.
steps, first everything. I missed.
Oh,
But I got to experience it again. I never thought I'd be able to. We weren't supposed to have one kid, let alone three. So I got to experience the baby portion with two
okay.
littles. So I'm pretty happy, about that because
Yeah.
I never thought I was going to get that back, man. But that's enough about my sad, soppy story. Let's go into something that makes everybody happy, man. So we're going from SpongeBob to my favorite show to ever come out of Cartoon Network, and in my opinion, the greatest show to ever come out of Cartoon Network Studios. Man, this is the bar that I'm at, that I measure everything to. So when it comes to anime, it's Cowboy Bebop. Is this on the level of Cowboy Bebop? When it comes to cartoons from the American side, is this as good as Samurai Jack?
Yeah.
Right? Samurai Jack, man. I gotta know, how do you go from doing SpongeBob? I'm pretty sure you had some layovers, maybe some little spots here
Yeah.
and there before you get to Samurai Jack. But how do you get the call? How do you meet Gendy? How does the whole thing transcribe with Samurai Jack?
There was a break in production.
Mhm.
Season one, they stopped at episode 13,
Mhm.
and there was probably like a 3 month gap. And that was kind of normal for Nickelodeon back then. So I had to go on to Dora for a little while, and then I had to go on to Fairly Odd Parents for a little while. Great experiences. And then it happened again, I think after season two, and it was a long gap, like
Mhm.
really long gap. And so I also love comics. I was a huge Gendy fan, and I can't remember. I think Chris Mitchell was like, "Hey, Eric Wiese is available," and so I sent him my Mermaid Man Barnacle Boy episode, and he really liked those superhero drawings, and we sat down and we talked comics. We talked X-Men, we talked Frank Miller, and we
Yeah.
really just that's where that was a good connection. And I think it was like maybe a day or two that it was like, want to come? Like, you may not go back to SpongeBob. And I was such a Gendy fan and fan of, Powerpuff Girls as well, and a fan of Dexter's. And so it was that thing of like, maybe it's a good thing if I tried this. So yeah, I did. And Aaron came with me also for the same reasons. It was like there was a break in production. And so we got there, and I was paired up with Chris Mitchell, and Aaron was paired up with Chris Riccardi. My God, what a pair up! I mean, it's like a brothers. I mean, they're like they it's Oasis, those two. You know, and then me and Chris, that was a lot of fun, and that was also a show like SpongeBob, where it was designed like a classic cartoon.
Mhm.
Gendy and some of the other guys, and I would too. We'd all sit around in the room and we just like pitch out ideas. And sometimes like you had a full idea, and sometimes you're like, I just want to see Gendy in prison. I want to see Samurai Jack in prison, and Gendy
Yeah.
would be like, okay, like Papillon, and you try it, and like, my episode and a bunch of other guys too. It's like you do it, you get halfway, and they're like, that's not this, and you kind of go back to the
Mhm.
drawing board. But I think, I was asked recently, like script versus um uh premise driven shows. I think you get to the visual excitement quicker. And I think that you find that can I tell this story with the least amount of dialogue?
Mhm.
And I think that's part of what's so fun about those shows that are premise driven.
Mhm.
And I think that's super clear with like Samurai Jack, you know. And so that was, really interesting to do, you know. Um, yeah, I mean, it was that perfect spot for me of like I wanted to be a comic book artist one time, but I also really love cartoony cartoons, and that was like right there in the middle. And also I loved that comic Ronin, the
Mhm.
Frank Miller comic, and
Yeah.
that was a big thing for Gendy. Also, there's like a lot of inspiration that was drawn from that. And we talked about that in the very beginning, and that was a pleasure to draw Samurai Jack for those last two seasons. You know.
I don't know if you can see it because my fat head's been here the entire time, but
I
he
see it.
is right in the middle. He was
I
the
see
first
it.
one I threw up there, man. Um, you know, we got to pause for just a second, ladies and gentlemen.
All right.
All right, and we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I preface this with I knew I was going to ask you some Chris Riccardi stories, man. Aaron Springer and Chris Riccardi, they have my favorite episode of Samurai Jack of all time. It's never going to be in anybody's like top 10, like, oh my God. It was just a silly episode of Chicken Jack, right? Jack's literally eating, I think he's eating ramen, and then he gets turned into a chicken because he steps on a wizard's shoe or something like that. So it's just and it's out of nowhere, especially with the men's
Yeah.
season.
Yeah.
It's just one of those episodes where, and I don't want to say this and I seem like a dick, but it was like it was bringing you back down to build you
Hmm.
back up because the rest of that season
Yeah.
was just hit, 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 hit. They were climbing that mountain,
Hmm.
no pun intended. Um, and it's one of the most, like I said, funniest things I've ever seen. It was also one of the most out of place in the best possible way
Hmm.
things I've seen within the series. Now, with that being said, I can't remember who told me this. I think it might have been Dan Crawler. It was Andy Bialk. So I apologize if I got either one of these wrong. But they said that whenever they were putting teams together, they would definitely put all the action guys together, all the comedy guys
Hmm.
together. I was trying to think of Kung Fu Brian. I can't think of his last name now. What's that? Andrews.
Any
Thank you.
others? Yeah.
Yeah, Brian and Mark. Like Brian was known for all of the styles for
They
kung
they were the
fu and all of that stuff.
standard. They were the
Mhm.
standard of action. Like
Yes.
all of us were just like, whoa, we'd never seen anything like that before. Yeah.
Where did you fall? Did you like doing more action? Did you like doing more comedy? Did you like doing amalgamation of the two? What side fit you best?
I was definitely in the middle.
Yeah.
I still like to do a lot of comedy and a lot of weird things, and that's the same thing for Chris. You
Hmm.
know, he loves to do ridiculous, weird, funny drawings, and so we were paired up because I think that we had a similar sensibility,
Hmm.
but we also really liked a lot of classic anime.
Hmm.
And I think that that's where we fell into it. But going back to Chicken Jack,
Hmm.
a lot of us thought the same thing. Like, this is completely left field.
Hmm.
Like, is Gendy gonna like this? And when we saw the pitch, it was just like, oh my God, there's no way it's gonna get cut. Like, it's making it through. It's gonna be great, and it is a classic for me too. But yeah, I think, it's in all the shows, SpongeBob, Powerpuff Girls, it's about casting.
Hmm.
We call, when you think of casting, you think of actors and everything, but you're like, okay, let's put him, in this. So I just came off of Spider-Verse, and
Hmm.
that was one of those situations where, like, I'm not great at doing a ton of action. I love doing it in Sonic Prime because it was also cartoony. It was this like nice combination of it. So, but with Peanuts, I can do a lot of emotional stuff. So it's kind of like they would cast me accordingly, and it's the same thing like when I've had to direct a show and it's like there's this sequence and that, like I know that I'm going to go, oh, who's a good board artist for that? You know, Mark Acklin. He can do
Hmm.
funny and he could do action. I know, or who can do these really quiet moments. Oh, okay, we'll get her. So I think that's what when Dan Crawl says that they would pair people up, they're trying to match the casting. And same thing with like SpongeBob. It was like get Eric and Aaron together. We were also already best friends. We were always very close. So we had similar sensibilities, like really weird, abstract humor. We
Hmm.
we always loved like that weird stuff. And then got to Samurai Jack. I was there before Aaron came in. I think again it was sort of the same thing of Chris and I brought Aaron in,
Hmm.
and they went, yeah, Chris Riccardi, like similar kind of vibes, and we got magic out of those guys.
Boy, oh
Yeah,
boy, that's an understatement of the century. Magic. You guys got perfection, is what, and
yeah.
it all was magic. There's this meme that I love, or a gif I love using. It's Shia LaBeouf, and I think he's on SNL, and he's like, "How'd you do it?" And he's like, "Magic," right? So whenever I watch Samurai Jack, that's what I think of. I think of magic, man. Now I'm gonna throw a couple names out here because one, I don't think we ever get to hear too many stories about these people. Obviously, Chris is no longer here, so I'm gonna save him for last. But I'd be remiss, and I don't. Whenever I say, like, I try to not draw absolutes, and I try not to say this, um, because I always feel like I'm going to offend my guests. But my hands down, my favorite artist of all time is Scott Wills. I
Oh
love
yeah, me
backgrounds.
too. Me
I
too.
l- I love like his sensibility and style, and
Yeah.
I don't know if it was because I was assuming that he was channeling Mary Blair, but I've talked to him a couple times, and I haven't talked to him in a while, but I've talked to him a couple times, and I just wanted to know as much as I could about Jack from his perspective, right? Being the art,
Mm-hmm.
one of the art directors, him and Dan Crawl, and he said he had channeled Mary, but it wasn't until he found an artist called Charlie Harper that was like this
Oh,
American modern,
yeah.
so you
I
know the
love
guy,
Charlie
right?
Harper. Yeah, I have a
That
big
he
book of
found.
his. Yeah.
Oh, if it's the same book that he said, that's a $400 book, by the way. If it's
Yeah. Oh,
the big
yeah.
one,
Yeah, it's
white,
the
yeah,
big
oh yeah,
long one.
white
Oh,
one,
wow.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was like, because he told me all the books that he went and got, so he could like try to, because it wasn't until Charlie he found the feeling for Jack that he was looking for, or the emotion or the depth, and that was the term he had used. So looking at that, I went to go buy the book, and I was like, "Oh, $400 on eBay. Nope, I'm not going to buy this one just yet."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but like I said, I love his art. I mean, I think he is like the standard when it comes to backgrounds and just his style and how
He is
he can just
incredible.
mix and mash. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
when
he's
you think of
incredible.
Scott Wills, is there a story that you might have gotten to like hang out
Hmm.
with him or talk, or what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear of Scott?
Techno. I think
Techno?
that, yeah, yeah, yeah. He and I really, it was the sort of that time of Big Beat, Chemical
Hmm.
Brothers, and Fatboy Slim, and Prodigy, and I have always been obsessed with post punk
Hmm.
and electronica. And so I would go into his office, and we would just talk shop about like what we're listening to. Um, a good memory is him letting me watch him paint
Hmm.
because it's something I don't do. I draw and I draw
Yeah.
storyboards. And as a storyboard artist, I don't really finish my drawings anymore.
Hmm.
I don't know how to finish a drawing, honestly. Like once I get the idea down, like, and maybe I'll tie it down a bit. Like I gotta, my ADD is done. I'm like done.
Yeah.
There's been times where people ask me to do a finished drawing. I'm like, I can't. But Scott will, he just goes and you're like, it's magic. It really is like a weird alchemy to watch him go down and hear him talk about like painting theory. And it's a different kind of abstraction. That's really it for me. And I love
Yeah.
Scott's work. I still, I follow him on Instagram and it's so great to see like him pull out some stuff from Samurai Jack and go like, oh yeah, I remember, or I worked on that one, like
Yeah.
the Mondo Robo. I think he posted it the other day or somebody did, and to see him, when your board is done and you know that Scott's working on it or Dan Crawl, you're like you
Yeah.
want to take a peek and see what's going on. You're like, wow, it's
It's like
real
trying to see
now.
what Santa brought for Christmas before everybody gets to open the gifts. You know what I mean? It's just he's one guy in particular that I wish I know he's very private guy, but I just wish he would do something, whether it was on YouTube or Patreon, just breaking down like his process because I've seen a
Hmm.
couple things that are out there and they're very small, right? It's nothing like too crazy, but just him walking through something like he did one a couple weeks ago where he was walking through how you guys did a background for Samurai Jack, and he was trying to see if he could do it like today, still modern, like you guys did back then. And he didn't do anything digital. I believe it was all old
It's
school,
all
right?
paint. Dude, I miss being able to like go into a studio and smell the art supplies. Nick Jennings on SpongeBob and Dan so to go in and you smell the paint like
Mhm.
and to see them painting with the brush and
Yeah. Hear
all
the
the little
strokes.
oh, it's
Mm.
so cool and that's gone. you know I even miss like just like pencil shavings and your eraser like dusting it off like that was good, that was real, that was analog. Yeah, I still have mine.
I spilt it when I picked it up, so I gotta I gotta vacuum up pencil shavings.
Yeah,
Now the other name I wanted to bring up, and I do not think she gets enough praise, enough love. Just like you can pull out a Scott, you can pull out a Scott piece of art anywhere, in my opinion. You can also pull out a piece from Lynn Naylor anywhere. She has got one of the most unique artists, one of the
I
most
have some of her
fantastic
stuff here
artists.
somewhere. Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
I assume you got to work with her at least a little bit, maybe over at Spumco before, and then maybe a
yeah,
little bit on Samurai Jack, and you guys probably
yeah,
run in the same circle, so you know each other.
yeah,
Do you have like a favorite moment, or did you ever get to watch her work like you did with Scott? Like what was it like just working with her?
yeah. It's funny you bringing all this stuff up because since 2020,
Hmm.
I haven't worked in a studio. This
Yeah.
is where I work.
Hmm.
So it's been like 5 years of not going to the studio. And just like with Scott Wills, it's like you get to go into their office or somebody's cubicle, and everyone's cool with like, oh yeah, go ahead. Like I'll show you what I'm doing.
Hmm.
And it's like, well, how do you do that? And it's like, oh, easy, and blah 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 blah, and I think that we're not getting that anymore. I mean, the other thing too. It's like I've gone through portfolios, and they're just like, oh my god, how did this 20 or 20 something, early 20s, learn to draw this well? Or do this animation so well. And it's like, they learned on YouTube or they learned through
Hmm.
all of those other like schoolism, and they can make entire short films on an iPad,
It's
and
insane.
and so it's insane. It's really advanced. But there is that human connection that, it's like, hey, let's go out to lunch and let's
Collaborative
talk
spirit.
shop. And yeah, that's gone. Doing the Peanuts special and doing Sonic, you sort of do these things where you're like, hey, let's hang out on
Hmm.
on Teams or on Zoom, and it works ish. But I do miss some of that, and sitting in an office with Aaron and Chris Riccardi and just talking about music and movies while I watch them draw.
Hmm.
I do miss some of that. Yeah. Although now that I'm older, and listen, you've not been to LA before, have you?
No, I've driven through it, and I drove through it in a horrible time. The Lakers, this is way back in the day. The Lakers had just won a playoff series.
Right?
Uh,
Yeah,
and this is
yeah,
going back to 2010, 11, somewhere around there. Or they had just won something.
it
They
was
like
crazy,
shut the streets down, and then
crazy.
people were grilling, or they were. I was driving from
Yeah.
Washington State because I got stationed in San Diego, so we're
Okay.
driving north, and we figured if we go through LA at 1 o'clock in the morning, no problem. It took us
No,
two and a
dude.
half hours to go 4 fucking miles.
Well, yeah, at that time that's crazy, but that
Yeah.
is the thing with Los Angeles is the amount of traffic.
Hmm.
So I don't miss that, and I'd rather have this than the traffic. But
Yeah.
yeah, it just is soul crushing the traffic in Los Angeles. I was working for Illumination for a little while, and it was such a great group. It was Derek Dreiman and a whole bunch of other
Hmm.
great artists. And so Illuminations in Santa Monica. I live near Pasadena. That's like a good 21 miles. Okay. But that drive would take 2 hours. Like the
That
traffic is
sucks.
horrible. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Just to get to the 405 freeway. And this is California talk about like the roads here, like the SNL sketch. Yeah,
Californians.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and so to not have to deal with all the traffic in Los Angeles, like that's really great. But I do miss those moments of sitting with a friend and
Mhm.
watching them draw and talk about like, why'd you do that joke? Why'd you
Yeah.
do that pan or whatever? Like, yeah, that's cool. And all going to the different departments. Scott Will's painting,
Hmm.
Nick Jennings painting, and all of those guys, and yeah. But back to Lynn, she was so giving in answering so many questions
Hmm.
of why and teaching you and showing you and um that was great and just such a sweet person. That's the other thing,
Yeah.
just such a sweet person. Yeah, yeah, that's what I
That's so,
remember best of her. She's not in Los Angeles anymore, she's out in Santa
yeah.
Fe, I believe. Yeah, yeah, so we don't see much of her these days, but a lot of my friends still keep in contact with her.
And before we rotate off of Samurai Jack, there is something that was very pertinent to what you were just talking about that Andy Bialk had said. Because Andy was talking because he was and when he came on, he was teaching, I believe, before he moved up to where he moved. Um, and he was
Portland.
talking about that people will go on Instagram, right? And they'll see these artists that have this perfect drawing, right? And they don't see the 10,000 or the 100
Yeah,
drawings or 10 drawings that you threw
yeah,
away before you got to that one you posted.
yeah,
He was very adamant on like post them all. That way people can see the progression. They can honestly see what the not the technique. What I don't want to take his words out of context or fuck with
the
the
process,
process. Thank you.
absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
just seeing from start to finish, this is not something that you're going to nail the first time out of the gate. It might take
Yeah,
you 100 drawings to get the hand right. You know what I mean? So you should see that.
yes,
That way people have that perception of going, oh, this isn't just one drawing is done. It's good. This is hundreds of hours of wasted drawings to get to
right,
this one drawing that I can post, man.
right.
So thank you for bringing that up because there's a lot of people that listen to the show that will write in and they'll talk about like I really like it when the artists talk about imposter
Yeah.
syndrome or they talk about the process of just throwing shit away.
The other thing, just to sort of tag that is, artists realize this, and that's the good thing about like working for Steve and for Gindi is they're the showrunners who have been storyboard artists and
Hmm.
writers. You can sometimes go onto a show or go to a studio where executives just think that it flows out. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Like it just happens. And it's kind of like, we'll just redo it tonight. And it's like, you don't get it. Like this took like 3 days. And these drawings, these expressions, all the acting, like it's not right from the very beginning. And
Hmm.
that is the thing where like I love to look for those shows where it's a showrunner who's done it also, who's been in the trenches with all of the other cartoonists who have had to write and draw, you know, a storyboard that's 2,000 panels,
Hmm.
and a lot of people don't realize that it takes that time and that yeah, you can go through 8 drawings before you get to the one, but also there are times where like when you get into that flow state, oh, the flow state, you don't want to get out.
Yeah.
You get into it and those drawings are just boom, 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 boom. It's
Hmm.
just great. And and then you do get there, but that first week is just it can be a struggle, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
he's right.
No.
And he's totally right. It's like you only see the finished drawings. We always do that, but what's behind the curtain, it's
Mhm.
there's just a wreckage.
Yeah. Just like I said, there's just something primal about seeing somebody post a drawing, I always relate it back to 101 Dalmatians. Like going back and watching that movie, there's some
Mm,
scenes in there where you can see how hard they kind of cut into the cell or
I
how
love it.
hard they cut into it whenever Pongo's head moves here and there.
Yeah.
So it's another like, I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but it's
You
just like
know,
another, go ahead.
that was Milt Kahl who really wanted, like when the Xerox machine happened for
Hmm.
cells, it was like, do not clean up all these drawings all the way. Like you
Yeah.
you really kept the life of it. Yeah, this is the story that Corny Cole told me. He was a fantastic animator. He was a teacher at CalArts. And it was this battle where apparently Milt Kahl was like, I don't want you to do a completely clean drawing. And if you carve into that paper, like, and you Xerox it onto the acetate, like, it looks cool. It looks
Hmm.
kinetic, and you can see the human touch a lot in there. And yeah, I love seeing. I'm I'm one of those nerds who wanted to be an animator. Where back when we had VCRs and had the jog shuttle,
Hmm.
did you have that?
I don't
Because
think
you're
so.
okay. So my generation, we had our VCRs, and there would be a little knob there, and it was a jog shuttle, and you hit
Mhm.
pause, and then you could just go like little, like you could frame by
Frame by
frame
frame.
by frame,
Yeah.
or do it slow motion, And I would watch everything, dude,
Hmm.
everything, Bugs Bunny and Dalmatians, and Cats Don't Dance, and Jungle Book and Dalmatians. I said Dalmatians, but you go through it, and then, but with Jungle Book and Dalmatians, you see all those like little things, and one frame is really just like hairy, and then the next one's like not as hairy, and then the next one is, and it does something really cool.
That it does. And like I said, it's that human touch that I think pretty soon, unfortunately, it's like you're not going to be able to know if a human touched it, right?
And I hate
So
it. I hate it.
yeah, absolutely, dude. It's a scary time. I don't have to tell you that because you're in the industry. I'm not. I'm just a fan of what you guys do, man. So I'm hoping something good will come out of this.
Yeah.
Um, but that's a talk for a different time.
Yeah.
Now, one second. Now, I started watching this one a couple years back with my oldest son before the littles really started watching TV or anything like that. And he jumps in and out of like he has he has this horrible trait where he'll start something and he never finishes it. He'll never
Yeah.
finish the show. And
Yeah.
then 6 months later, when he's taking a break and
I'm like that.
well,
I'm
it
like
sucks
that.
because I watch shows with him and I'm like, hey, you want to watch this? And he's like, no, not really. I'm going to watch this other thing. I'm like, dude, we've only got like 20 episodes left. Can we just finish? I want to know how the story
Yeah.
ends, man. So he'll jump back and forth and little kids do it too. So Sonic Prime, I've seen it here and there. I love it, right? I was never a big Sonic kid growing up. I loved the Sonic soundtrack. I loved the music that they played for Sonic, but I was always a Mario kid, right?
Uh-huh.
But going back and watching this show, it made me feel like I missed out playing Sonic on the Sega when
Uh-huh.
it came out. So
Uh-huh.
I went back because of the show that you worked on with Sonic Prime. I went back and I bought all of the ones I could buy on the Switch or whatever game system I was playing it
Yeah,
on,
yeah, yeah.
playing those originals so I could kind of revisit and kind of like rebuy my childhood, man. So
Hmm,
I got to know
hmm.
before you get on to Sonic, man, were you a fan of the
Yes.
game? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It goes back to CalArts. So
Hmm.
it was there was Nintendo and there was Sega. And I was in a cubicle studio with Aaron Springer and Carlos Ramos and Bob Rossetti. And we went downtown LA and bought this little TV with VCR, and we brought our video game systems and put
Hmm.
it in there. And the thing that we really liked about Sonic was that, like, it's Mario, just, super
A little
fast.
faster paced.
But then the other part of it too was the animation was this interesting combination of Wile E. Coyote. It had
Hmm.
all of the principles of animation, and it had a different attitude than Mario, And I think that got us, especially Sonic 2. There
Hmm.
was the first, pixelated, 16-bit, whatever. That was great. Sonic 2 the animation was taken to somewhere else. And as animators, we were like, wow, this is cool.
Yeah.
uh, and all of the physics with it and the camera moves, and that got us. And we followed it for a long time. I think where all of us kind of fell out with Sonic was when Saturn came out. That was
Mhm.
when like new platforms like Sony PlayStation and Xbox were coming out, and the new GameCube, Nintendo GameCube. But that Sonic kind of fell out, and it wasn't until years later that I got back into Sonic, and I just really liked him as a character. There's something kind of punk rock about him,
Mhm.
especially with the spikes. I really liked
Yeah, the
that.
blue spikes.
Yeah, man, it was cool. He was a really cool character. But as a cartoonist, you move in and out of different characters that you like, and he was always there. And when the opportunity came up, um, actually, at first, I'll say this: I was on Peanuts as a head of story on the first new specials,
Mhm.
and it came up, and I was really reluctant to do it. There just aren't enough shows that I saw like where they took a video game and made it cool.
Yeah.
There's
Or
a lot out
good.
there. Yeah. And so I was like, um, but then they showed me some of the tests, and I was like, yeah, that is cool. That's Sonic. And so yeah, I jumped in and got into it. So yeah, I was a Sonic fan from the beginning.
Friends! Look, Shadow, I'm late for. Learn to focus. Oh no! Eggman! Hate to hit and run, but I got a split, Shadow! Sonic.
Shadow?
Come on, we gotta get out of here!
Wait, stop! We shouldn't be trying to escape!
What you talking about? There's robots after us!
We get our hands on their energy crystal, we shut down their entire operation, and take back our city.
Crystal? Energy crystal? Hold on, wait a sec. Did you say crystal? Is it a big crystal thingy? Shiny? Reflecty? Prismy?
Sure.
The paradox prism, of course! Come on, team. Together, we're gonna fix the world!
Traitor! Divert more energy from the crystal to the box! Immediately!
We're done for. They're too powerful, too fast.
Too fast? You need to learn to spin dash, my friend.
Spin dash?
Watch and learn!
Coconuts!
You're up! You see that bad guy over there?
Yeah?
Now spin!
Come on, let's go!
Huh? They're headed for the core. They're headed for the core! Guys! Guys! Guys!
I guess dreams don't come true.
Ah, come on. You don't believe that, do you?
How's this for a Hail Mary? Hugga Dugga!
Enough with the baby. Give me the old man for once.
Yeah.
Now, when you get onto something like this, something that you've had past experiences with as far as video games, now, when I walk into my room, and I'm trying to preface this with the question I'm trying to ask, but when I walk into my room, the reason I decorate it the way I decorate it is because I want to be in that childlike wonder, right? I want to
Yeah.
walk in here and see all my Ninja Turtles above me and see the cartoons behind me and then see all my comics behind me too, right? So it
Yeah.
puts me
Yeah.
in a different mindset. I don't have to worry about the kitchen. I don't have to worry about being a dad for a couple hours when I'm talking to you guys. And I get to kind of like geek out, right? That's what the
Yeah.
whole podcast is for. It's very cathartic in that sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you get to work on a character that you played as a video game, one, does it feel real? Does it feel surreal? But two, do you get transported back to that kid-like, you know, mentality?
Yeah. No, yeah, you do. Because you're trying to honor that thing
Hmm.
that it is a bit of a time machine and back to back. So I'm gonna cross characters here. I
Ghostbusters
did.
said never cross the streams there.
I was gonna, you got that for me. No, it was, I just did Charlie Brown and I just did
Mhm.
Sonic. And Charlie Brown is definitely like when I was a little kid that I got
Yeah.
into it, because of Snoopy. Um, so yeah, when you get into that world of theirs and you're in it and you're drawing these characters and you're like, wow, I'm doing this. I'm
Hmm.
I'm taking a time machine back into my childhood and I gotta respect it and I gotta honor it. And same thing with Sonic. These are two different worlds. I mean, God, they're totally extreme. You got Snoopy, Charlie Brown, the Peanuts universe, and then you have the Sega universe. And I loved them both. And doing Sonic, yeah, it was surreal. And then also you have the notes from Netflix or whatever, and it's kind of like, but we want to change him a little bit, and you're like, yeah, that's not Sonic, and you
Yeah.
try to, and creatively you're kind of doing this to try to get the Sonic that you love versus like what metrics might be, but nevertheless, I man, I had a great time doing Sonic. I
Yeah.
could revisit that world anytime, and I love Sonic and Shadow. Shadow was a blast for sure, and also working with that team.
Hmm.
Man of Action is so much fun, and working with the Wild Brain team, they were great. What an incredible bunch of artists that they have there. Yeah,
Yeah. My youngest boy Cooper, he loves his introduction was the Sonic movies that they've done over the last couple years.
great. They're
Oh,
great.
fantastic, man. These movies made me more of a fan of Sonic and wanting to go back and revisit Sonic
And
than
that's what's
anything else.
happened. And that's what's
Yeah.
happened. That's sort of now the reverse is like,
Hmm.
it's this cyclical thing of just like
Yeah.
we made these great movies, and guess what? Now these kids are going to come back
Hmm.
and get all the stuff. Same thing with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh yeah.
It's like these movies that they made are so great, and maybe the movie didn't do everything that they wanted to do, but all of the merchandise and
It
the
just hit
sale,
refresh. That's all it did.
boom, and it just
Hmm.
feeds back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll never not go in. I don't care if Michael Bay directs. I don't give a shit, man. I'm gonna go and see everything Ninja Turtles because, like I said, without the Ninja Turtles, I don't think I get into cartoons. If we're being honest, man. That as a
That
three,
was your
four
entry
year
point?
old.
Hmm.
Yeah, and a lot of people, it's with the 87 cartoon series. Don't get me wrong, it's a fantastic series. I love that series. The voice actors on there, the iconic voice actors that I hear whenever I think of cartoons, those are the voices I hear, but it wasn't until, like I said, that 1990s movie, that first movie, in my opinion, and I've seen this movie. I'm no shit. I burnt this or excuse me, I burnt this VH out 3 times. Right. I had 2 VHSs that I can remember when I was really little. Is this one, and it was Dumb and
Yeah.
Dumber. Guess which one my mom did not buy again? You're right. If you're following
Right.
along, ladies and gentlemen, it was Dumb and Dumber. Right. So I would just watch this VHS, and it's still how that movie opens up. It's a shot of New York. I've always wanted to go to New York City. It's a shot of New York, and it's the most beautiful sunset. It's the pinks, it's the blues, it's the reds, it's the purples. It's street level. It's dark, it's gritty. It's got some humor. It's like a perfect movie, but people don't look at it because it's fucking 4 animatronic turtles that's led by a rat dude named Shredder, and it's some old old history type of thing when it's
Yeah.
feudal Japan type of stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So people don't really look at it as a serious film. Like it's not on the same level as The Godfather and The Goodfellas and all that things. But in my opinion, it's one of the most perfect movies that's ever made. There's not a bad moment. There's not a dull scene. You know what I mean? And it's just perfect
That's great. I'm glad.
cinematography, right?
Wonderful. Yeah. Yeah.
And without that, I don't get into comic books. I
Everything
don't
else.
get into
Yeah.
cartoons,
Sure.
right? So I
Sure.
really have to pay like
Yeah.
Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. Those guys are like
Yeah.
your Mount Rushmores, like your greatest
Yeah.
heroes of all time. Like those
I
guys created
love
something for me.
those first four comics, and I had them. I don't know where they are.
Do you want to know how much a first edition of number
I
one
do
goes
know.
for?
No, I don't want to. I don't want to hear it. I'm super upset. Yeah, because it was that thing too of like, I loved the Frank Miller Daredevil comics, and I
Hmm.
loved all of those like ninja things, and then suddenly here's a turtle version of it, like
Yes.
they're black and white, and it looks kind of underground, and like the inking is just like they're figuring it out, and it looked
Hmm.
great, and they were like kind of oversized, and there was like no color on the covers. Like that was cool. The funny thing about the movie that you're talking about, I hated it.
What?
I didn't like
Oh,
it. But
this was
here's the
going
thing.
so great, Eric.
You're not the only one. In fact, it's in a revival theater right now.
Yes,
I
because
think
it's
it's
the 35th
playing.
anniversary.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
I know so many people that are psyched to go see it.
Hmm.
So I'm like, maybe I gotta go see this movie
You
again.
got to revisit it, dude.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
like I'll show
Yeah.
you this real
By the way,
quick,
my
man. But
wife, one of her friends, was one of the actors from it who
oh
did
yeah.
the voice. I can't remember. Yeah, I'll tell you. Yeah, later
Well,
on.
maybe you should
Yeah.
hang out with her a little bit more, and your life will be more complete going into seeing this. You know what I mean?
We'll
So
go see Turtles together.
yeah, we're gonna have to, man. But it wasn't for this. Like they did the whole NECA or Nika. I don't know how to pronounce the toy
Yeah,
company.
yeah,
They did the whole '90s line. Like I said, it's just these are the voices that I hear when I read the comics. Like
yeah,
when I think of the Turtles, these are what come up, man.
yeah.
All right, and we're back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're at the home stretch. This is why we're all together. We had this chat. We had it set up. We had it set up, and we had it set up. And then you go, "Hey, man, I'm working on something really, really cool with Peanuts." And like I said, fans know, huge Peanuts fan. You got it on your shirt. You got Charlie over your right shoulder, man. There is no comic strip that is greater than the Peanuts. Charles Schultz, old Sparky himself, man. Created, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinions, the greatest cartoon strip of all time,
Yeah.
right? So you had said when we were talking just a second ago that you feel like a kid, your youngest
Oh
self,
yeah.
with the Peanuts, right, man? So I got to know, with this movie that you just directed, what was it like going, oh my God, my name is going to go down as in the anthology of the Peanuts. I'm going to be a part of this legacy, this story, this universe forever now. What does that feel like? I know that's throwing a whole bunch of shit at you that you're probably not thinking about in that form, but like when I think about it, that's the way I think about Eric. He's in this as well as your team is in this forever, man. What does it feel like?
Yeah, it was a privilege. It was a
Yeah.
real privilege to direct and work with the Schultzes.
Mhm.
I mean, when it happened and I was told that I would be doing this, I mean, it was kind of an outer body experience.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, yeah. I mean, when something like, these characters mean something to you. It's why, like,
Mhm.
we go to Comic-Con and people dress up like it. Like,
Yes.
it's part of your DNA, and so Snoopy is such a part of my DNA, and so is Charlie Brown. And as a little kid, for me, it starts with Snoopy,
Hmm.
because he's just fun and he's living that fantasy life that like a kid wants. And then as you get older and you see what the world is like, and then you start to identify with the other Peanuts characters and Charlie Brown. Snoopy's the winner,
Hmm.
and Charlie Brown is the one who
Yeah.
struggles. And you start to realize he's the everyman. He's the guy
Hmm.
that isn't always succeeding, and he is giving you the hard truths of some things. And the conversations that he has with Linus are existential, and the conversations that he has with Lucy. I mean, that whole football gag of getting rid of the football, like, and
Hmm.
it just never ever stopped. I mean, there's some truth to that. And there's a lot of us where we just try and try and try, and it's about like how difficult life is, and he'll bring that back just to like remind you. And Craig Schultz said to me just the other day that, like, I was just sort of explaining this thing that I'm saying to you now, which was like, Charles felt like Charlie Brown,
Hmm.
but he wanted to be Snoopy, you
Yeah.
know, and that constant winner, and didn't care about anything. He could be anybody he wanted. He could fly if he wanted to with his propeller ears and do all this cool stuff. But the Peanuts, there are these, because we all have a kid inside of us. That's like,
Hmm.
that's why you collect turtles. You're going back to that place
Yeah.
where of wonder.
Childlike wonder.
Yeah, and so they're kids, but they're wrestling with this real life stuff. So um what then you start to realize as you're getting older, still reading these comics, is that like it was sort of the gateway to alt comics for me, to like Love and Rockets, where these are you're getting, the entry point was Snoopy and all the cartoon stuff, and then suddenly you're like, wow, this is some heavy stuff. What
Hmm.
Charlie Brown is saying, one of my favorite Peanuts strips, and I guess it ran for 4 days. It's Charlie Brown's on the mound, and the ball comes, he spins and he drops, but this time he drops and he's completely balanced on his head, and he
Hmm.
just says, I'm upside down. And like Linus comes over, he's like, hey Charlie Brown, blah 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 blah, and doesn't care that Charlie Brown's upside down. And Charlie Brown, at the fourth panel, he's like, I'm upside down. And Charles Schultz does this for 4 days,
Hmm.
and at the end, you think Snoopy's gonna help him. He goes and he lays down, he does the same thing upside down. And Charlie Brown's like basically asking for help. He's like, I'm upside down. He says this over and over and over to people, I'm upside down. And then Snoopy leaves him. And then the last panel is Charlie Brown still saying, I'm upside down. Nobody went to help him. And you're
Hmm.
like, that is, and some of those things happen in life, and it's like a call for help, but like no one's doing that stuff. And I think that a lot of those end panels are, you get there, and it's so deep, and it's playing in this really profound place. I think that's what's so cool about the Peanuts, is that you get this incredible balance of fun, cartoony, and really cartoony poses, and but then also you get these really deep existential moments with these characters, that are kids.
Oh, absolutely. And when you bring up the example of the football always getting pushed, it wasn't until, or pulled, excuse me, it wasn't until maybe 10 years ago where I'm reading that and I look at it differently than you kid. You look, oh man, Lucy,
Yeah,
what an ass, right? Always
you look at it
let Charlie
differently
get a
when you're an
win,
adult. Yeah,
right?
for
And
sure.
then more so as of late, I've looked at it as like progression in life, right? You're going to
Mhm,
come through these hurdles. Something's going to happen, right?
mhm.
Like whenever my wife and I will sit over like, man, we've got a decent amount saved. We're doing really good. Bam, 4 new tires. That's $1,000. And I'm like,
Exactly.
what the fuck? And that's that
That's it.
football being pulled out in front of you, right? So it's just
Yeah,
life throwing you these little obstacles, sink or
yeah.
swim, essentially,
And
kick
I
or
sort
don't
of
kick.
feel like the other thing too is that, like, as we progress in this life
Hmm.
and things are getting, I just feel like there's the system is doing that. You
Hmm.
just think you're going to get ahead, and then the four
Two
tires,
steps back.
a fire in Altadena,
Yeah.
like here's an earthquake, like, and you're so close to going like, oh, okay, I'm there, and then swipe, and that's what he's saying,
Hmm.
and life is always going to have a lot of those. You're also going to have a lot of wins.
Yeah. Oh,
There's always
absolutely.
there's always going to be the football being swiped away from you right when you're so close.
But the point of that whole thing with Charlie though is he never gave up. He knows that the possibility it's like a 98, 99% chance she's going to pull this. He even gets her to sign a contract in one of these things and she goes,
Yeah,
wasn't notary or it wasn't
yeah,
notarized, you know what I mean?
notarized. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah, yeah.
there's these moments where it's just like keep going,
I do, I
there's always going to be
do
bad.
in the special, I do play with that a little bit. I
Hmm.
can't give away, but for those who haven't seen it, well, I mean, listen, it's out, so we
Yeah.
can talk about it. But like, it is that thing where I wanted Charlie Brown to have a win,
Hmm.
and this isn't in the usual Peanuts universe, and what happens when the thing that makes him feel like a winner is going to be taken away, the football,
Hmm.
right? But
Yeah.
this is like the place, and this is, sort of a metaphor for our planet Earth, and you could argue that it is a environmental story. And this is a very special place where we go and we enjoy nature, and it changes Charlie Brown, and he is a winner there. So if it gets taken away, like what happens? But that's what I was also sort of playing with, and the conversations with the Schultzes of like, what is it like if Charlie Brown was this way? Let's flip that script. He is a winner, but then
What
it's
does it
threatened.
cost?
Yeah, what it's threatened. Yeah.
Now, with this one in particular, you can call me an asshole if this is not how it's supposed to be or not how you envision it, but this is what I took away from it. And blame it on the weed, not my heart, Eric. So take it for what it's worth. So I'm watching this and I'm drawing like I think everybody tries to do this. You try to associate with every character. You try to find some common ground with anything and everything that you're consuming, right? So that way you can understand, like if it's a villain, like I understand why a villain is doing X, Y, or Z. Same thing with the hero, right? Now, when I'm
Yeah.
watching this movie, and I don't know if it's just because I'm so nostalgic of days of long gone, right? Like I see the numbers of my age start ticking up, and it's a lot closer to a higher number than it is a lower number,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this I'm thinking, like, man, is this a story about how kind of things evolve through time, right? We were just talking about the art and the AI thing, right? How this new thing that is being birthed right in front of us is kind of starting to take away a lot of jobs. And one of the jobs that I'm very concerned, like you're concerned about, is animation because you can literally go in there and put any kind of prompt in, and with 15 minutes, you can do what a studio does in 6 months, a year. So we can do it like that, right? And it's very scary. And when I'm watching that, that was like the first thought I had. I was like, and it's not just with AI and artists, with anything that's being automated. And I start seeing that, and then it was completely erased because, like I said, I love going back and hooking up the VHS and putting a VHS tape. I got the Turtles on VHS if you want to borrow it, by the way, Eric. I got it over here.
Sure. All right.
I'll send it out to you so you can watch it. But I'm watching this and I'm starting to feel like, fuck, was this what he was trying to say? Was this what the team was trying to do?
Yeah, it
Was
is.
push what new is not known, or was it what it was once old is
It
now
is.
becoming new, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. The this song "Light as a Cloud."
Mhm.
Here we are now, but Charlie Brown is wrestling with three things. Past,
Mhm.
he's really like, wow, it could go away. What a great time that was, and it's gonna go away. What is the future? He's afraid
Mhm.
of like what's going on because he sees it in the horizon. That's
Mhm.
what we're dealing with AI. But we also have to live in the now, which is,
Mhm.
something that, if you meditate, it's like, and if you're here now, like we gotta be here now. So it is those ideas that, the different layers, and a lot of that came with the conversation with Ben Folds, who wrote the music. And it was like, how can we get this idea across? And it was that thing of like, well, Charlie Brown is wrestling with all of this stuff, and it's also about him being happy that Sally is realizing how important this place is, and she can leave behind all of the technological stuff. For right now, it's like, can you put that phone down and read a book? And
Mhm.
guess what? Wow, you're gonna love it.
Yeah.
So that's what that is that we're trying to touch on a lot of different things, and maybe you see it clearer when you are stoned because you are playing with a lot of metaphor. That
Hmm.
song is really, I mean, he blew me away with that song. It's such poetry, and it's not like your standard, high school musical
Hmm.
lyrics where you're gonna literally sing the literal thing that's happening in front of you.
Hmm.
You do have to really pay attention to the poetry of what's going on with that song, with those lyrics, and what's happening with Charlie Brown. And it informed me like what to do, also, the way that I start to use that history wall as kind of what you're saying. It's a time machine. You're going in and out of
Direct
those
link to the
moments.
past.
Yeah, and you're also showing the parallels, and you're also showing what it's going to do to the future. It made him who he is, and the same thing with showing all the different timelines of Charlie Brown and his evolution too is playing to not only my memories of it, but I also want to make sure that everybody of those generations who had that Charlie
Hmm.
Brown gets it, because that's what I think the bigger theme is of that whole episode is honoring the past. How can we continue to move that into the future? How can we preserve it? Because it's also a rite of passage for so many people, and we're in this generation of pop culture really is makes us, who we are. For you,
Hmm.
it's Turtles. For me, it's Star Wars, and for other people, it's the prequels, which I don't understand. But that's what happens, and it's we do film preservations, and we sometimes have to fight for that, and that's what this whole story is about. So now you got it, and what's cool is that you went like deeper than what a lot of other people see. Like you could watch a movie like The Shining, and you can go deep into
Hmm.
places where you're like, "Am I the only person saying it?" And it's your interpretation of that movie.
Yeah.
Like, that's cool. I'm not comparing my to The Shining, but it's like it's cool. Like we were deliberately doing that. Somebody did like a thesis on SB 129, SpongeBob episode. Aaron
Hmm.
and I did, and I they went to places that we didn't think,
Hmm.
and then you're sort of like, well, we did kind of intentionally do that. Like there were some things where we were like, yeah, we were making a commentary on this and that, but then it went even deeper, and it's like, I didn't see that before. Like I can see that now. And so some viewings of this, the conversation is not. That's what I love. I'm so glad that like you said that. That's cool.
Well,
That makes me happy.
well, I'm glad it makes you happy because the movie made me happy, man. And I told you before we hit record, my favorite scene in this whole thing was that nighttime shot. I love color. Like yellow is my favorite color, right? So I think that's why I'm just so, not attracted like, in a weird way to Woodstock because he's my favorite character throughout the entire series. The entire comic strip, man. It's just something about the yellow that pops off the screen. It's why I like
Yeah, of
Charlie's shirt, man.
course.
It pops,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And but the shot that I'm talking about, and we talked, like I said, we talked about before we record. It's them all at the lake. Everything is blue. The stars, they're shooting stars. They're all looking up, and it's that moment where Charlie and the rest of them figure out like, oh man, if we don't stop and save this now, nobody else. This is going to be upside down the entire time. We're not
Yeah.
going to be able to. Everybody's going to walk by and they're going to see that this place is upside down, and nobody's going to turn it around and make it come back to
Yeah.
what it was. Right? It's not
Yeah.
going to be
Yeah.
preserved for generations to come.
Right.
So with that scene in particular, like I said, I paused it and I was amazed. Like I said, the colors, the art, just how everything moved. It seemed so surreal, so peaceful. And very rarely do I get like this attached to something and try to delve a little bit deeper into this. But like I said, it just that scene in particular, I don't know why. Maybe it was the colors, maybe it was just because that's how the story was kind of going. And you kind of see like a shift in everybody, right? And it just stuck out to me, man. How does a scene like that kind of come together where, you're
Mhm.
obviously trying to wrap up the show, you're trying to get what you started here, everything's starting to come together, and then you're trying to pay the finish with the end of this special, man.
Yeah.
But how does a shot like that kind of get conveyed through you? Because I know you said you boarded this one, but like how does this
Yeah.
one come about?
I was on a road trip from Seattle back to Los Angeles, and I took
Mm.
the 101, and we were going through Big Sur, and it was really late at night, and you could see Orion's belt. Like
Yeah.
it was, it's that thing where suddenly you realize how small you are in the
Yes.
universe,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you go like, oh yeah, that's God.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like you're in the presence of God. It's
Hmm.
godlike, you know.
Yeah.
And, in the very beginning, Sally's like, why do I need to go out there? I can see stars outside my window. Yeah, no, you can't.
You can't
This is
experience
this
it.
is what it is. And where else are you going to see it unless you go out into places like this? And, when you hear about stories where like the billionaires are going to be able to build in front of national parks, and
Yeah.
now it's not available to everybody, like it will always be in the way, and it's only going to be for like the super rich, right? These parks are there for a reason. They're there for all of us to enjoy it, and
Hmm.
so that's one of the threats. And I was incredibly moved by it. you know um I to see something underneath the stars like that is incredibly moving, I think. And I wanted to show that with our characters. And I also felt like that was going to be the final thing that made Sally go like, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. Like there's all this fun stuff. And then there's this like celestial, godlike, natural, real church moving moment for
Hmm.
her. And in a way, that was a similar experience that I had. And to, pull over on the side of the road with my wife and just sit at the car and look at it and see the stars reflecting
Yeah.
on the ocean, this really calm ocean, and hear it, you're like, just that like calm sound of the ocean. I wanted to share that. And I felt like that was a really cool part. And it just worked also so well with Ben. And that as he was writing that song, I was telling him the imagery that I had in my
Hmm.
head. And sometimes his stuff would feel like my imagery. But I told him I wanted to end on that. And so he knew, like, okay, that's cool. Like, we'll get that. So, and then at the very end of it, like the song ends. And I just, we linger on that because I think that's the other thing too. It's like, oh man, there's so many like Instagram videos where you're watching like a real moment, an important like moment, and somebody puts like Hans Zimmer music on something. It kind of, for me, makes it's uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Like, all the stuff that's happening with the raids in Los Angeles or the fires here in Pasadena and the Palisades. And it's real footage, but for some reason, when somebody decides to put like a soundtrack over it, you start to get detached. You start to feel
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm watching a movie. Those are just
Yeah.
effects, you know. And some of the imagery that we're seeing right now is so beyond. And then people put this music on it that it's easy to now sort of flip to the next image and not
Yeah.
take that in. And
Takes the
so
uncomfortableness out of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We're talking about cartoons here, but it is related. The thing is, like, I wanted to remove and let that real moment happen. That's the Peanuts. I think that's what makes it so different from all the other cartoons that are out there, is that we don't have to stick to the algorithm of whatever formula,
Hmm.
has the executives have learned of like what makes a hit show. Turn it super bright, make sure everyone's delivering these dialogue, the dialogue with this velocity and this kind of volume. um it's just more analog. And had I not had worked on this movie, I don't think anybody would have let me do something like let me linger on no music on this wide shot, for 30 seconds. And to experience that with Sally, for her to go like, I get it, basically like we have to save the camp. And that's what inspires Charlie Brown to then actually fight and get them together. That's what's happening right now. You know, we got to
It
band together and
really
do it and protect.
it it really reminded me, and I hate to bring it back to Samurai Jack, but it really reminded me of Samurai Jack, how you guys could just stay in a moment, right? Whether it was a good moment, a bad moment, it was uncomfortable.
Yeah,
You know,
man,
you
Gimby
guys
knew how to do
stayed
that.
in it and you
Yeah.
guys gave it time to breathe. you
And
know, and that was
it
what was so special about that episode or that scene.
I think the other thing too is that like Gindi had the power to do that. He
Mhm.
knew it's like people had trust in him, and it's same thing with all the other ones that he does. It's like he wasn't afraid to go and linger on a shot, or hey, let's not do any cutting. Let's just stay on Samurai Jack doing whatever. And that's rare to find those cartoons to get onto one of those shows, and you try to get onto them. Like that's where you feel like an artist.
Oh, absolutely, man. And like I said, that's the feeling I got when I was watching that scene. Like obviously I paused it, so I made the scene longer than you guys intended it to be, but I wanted to sit in there because it
Mhm.
was serene. It was peaceful. Like very rarely, me in particular, just in the profession I'm in, I'm always going. I can't stop, right? Tickets pile up. I've got to get plates out. I got to feed people. People want to skit, you know what I mean? So it's just very rarely do I get to sit down and like enjoy something without having that like, oh fuck, I should be doing something right now, right?
Yeah,
So me pausing it at that moment and just being able to like absorb what those kids were absorbing at that time and
yeah,
being to put myself into that moment, like because as a kid and even as an adult there's times or there's situations that arise that you sometimes you have to be the hero for the story. You have to save something because nobody else is going to do it. At least that's your perception. And like I said, that moment right there, it wasn't anything but like I just felt peaceful. I got to sit there and look because I haven't gotten to go out into the country. I haven't gotten to go out into the
mm,
mountains or the lakes in a very long time. But when I was a little
mm,
kid, I used to go up and visit my grandparents in West Virginia. And when it goes dark, it goes dark. There's no lights around
mm,
where they were at. And you could just
mhm,
sit up and stare. And there was
mhm,
moments, especially when I was growing up, man, we didn't have phones. We didn't have like the internet was just starting to really come around. My grandparents didn't have it. We still had, standard cable and stuff like that up there. So it was very, very techless, so just going out there and looking at the mountains or looking at the stars, you had mentioned it before, you realize how small you are in this entire universe of things going on. So like I said, if I can ask you for a favor, man, I don't know if you have to reach out to Apple, if you have to reach out to the Schultz people, that scene right there, it needs to be a t-shirt. I'm no bullshit. Even if it's just one, I'll fucking buy it and I'll wear it. I would
I'll make it
love to
for you.
see. I would love to just
I'll
see
make it
that
for you.
scene as a shirt. Thanks, man.
Sure. Yeah,
You know what I mean? I
yeah.
just like I said, it was just something so beautiful. That right there. If like I was going to a theater to see this, that's my price of admission right there. That's what I'm selling everybody on right there. You guys gave me peace for 30
Mm.
seconds, a minute, however long I was sitting there staring at it, because I was staring at it for a very long time, and I was just like, man, this
Oh
is
man.
this feels
I,
good,
I'm
you know?
Yeah, oh man, that means a lot to me. And I'm glad that it
Yeah,
affected you in that way. That's what we're trying to do. And I think that's
you
why
guys
we love
crush it.
movies. We love movies so much because it can do all of those different things. And coming from you, I'm honored and I'm so glad that it affected you in that way.
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
It
thank you,
worked.
man. You got me. And as we wind down here, man, I'd be remiss not to ask you, I don't get to do like I have bucket list guests, right? And you've been on my bucket list for a very long time, ever since we started talking,
Thank you.
because I knew, no, thank you. All the things that you've worked on, like you've popped up throughout my life. Like so many people that I have on my show, you guys popped up like when I needed you guys most, like when I needed,
Mm,
a pick me up. I would like deployed, missing my wife and missing my kids. I would pop cartoons on Samurai Jack, Hey Arnold, King of the Hill, right? Those were
mm,
like some of my go-to shows that I could get on DVD. I could just pop in. And even if it was for a 30-minute, just like I don't have to think about missing somebody. I don't have to think about,
yeah.
I wonder what
Yeah.
my family's doing without me right now. You know what I mean? It felt like, you remember that movie Scrooged with Bill Murray, where he
Yeah, of
was
course.
watching the life go around him,
Yeah.
and it's the same thing in Interstellar. Or was it Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey?
It's a great
That
movie.
fucking
Yeah,
scene is
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
difficult when he's on the other
Yeah.
like I think
I
I'm
know.
trying not to fucking cry, man, but it's like as a dad, like you're all like just as a parent, like you don't
Yeah.
want to go without your kids, you know what I mean? And it's just like that
Yeah.
scene is so powerful.
Yeah.
So you guys would pop up throughout, whether you worked on that episode or not, man. You guys would pop up through the times that I needed you most, man.
Oh,
So like I
wow.
said, is so thank you for what you've
Oh,
done, man. Now,
wow.
this will be the last question I ask you, as far as the peanuts go and the episode goes, man. But when you sit back and you think about you starting in Spumco, you said one of the things you were working on way back when was a music video and a Nike commercial, and then you got to do SpongeBob, then you got to do Samurai Jack, and you got to do Sonic, and you got to do the money. You got to do all of these crazy things, and the last thing you've done here was both the Spidey movie that you worked on, the SpongeBob, and now the Peanuts, man. when you look at that as the grand scope, if you're looking at that as like you're looking at the Orion, you look at the Orion's belt and you're looking at it like that scope, right? What's the first thought that comes to mind when this movie is wrapped up? You went like it's done, it's ready, people are going to see it very soon. What's the first thought that you have when you think about this entire experience with the Peanuts in the movie you directed?
Feel very lucky. I feel
Yeah.
very fortunate. Yeah, I mean, I worked hard for these
Mhm.
things, but also there's some luck that plays into it, and
Yeah.
you know, yeah, I feel incredibly lucky to have been able to be a part of that list that you just said.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shows out there that are not great, and I feel
Hmm.
incredibly fortunate to have been chosen to work with such incredible artists on such incredible shows, you know. So
No,
that's my answer.
absolutely. And I lied to
Yeah.
you, man. This will be the last question I ask you. If you could go
Let's
back in
go
time
do
and you
it.
could tell your little kid self that you one day, little Eric, you are going to work on a Peanuts special.
Oh
What
yeah.
do you think little Eric would have said to you? Help, I need an adult.
Yeah, little Eric
All
would have
jokes
been
aside.
just like little Eric would have freaked out and he would have
Mhm.
run around like SpongeBob. That's
Yeah.
honestly, that's 8-year-olds love to just run around. I would have run around and done that. That's what I would have done. Yeah.
No.
And I would, and also older self would have told younger self, don't worry so much.
Those are all great points to tell your younger self, man. Well, like I said, this has been a blast. It's been a long time coming. I'm so glad we were finally able
Oh,
to do this,
I'm
man.
so happy that we were able to do this. It was a long time coming. And, like what Miles was saying, same thing for me. It was just like, we would try to set it up so many times, and then
Mhm.
some life thing would happen, or, you know, deadlines would happen, and, the Charlie Brown life stuff would happen. You're so
Yeah.
close, and then the football goes away. And it's
Yeah.
like, I'm sorry, Julian. I'm so, so sorry. I'm glad that we got to do this. I'm now like right between gigs too. Like you caught me at the right month. So
Yeah.
yeah, I started to get into the weeds again, next week. So this is perfect time.
Oh, it absolutely is, man.
Yeah.
Well, where can the fans, one, when this movie's already dropped at this point now, but where can the fans go and see one, the movie, two, if they want to say, hey, I loved what you did in the Peanuts, Samurai Jack, SpongeBob, or anything else you worked on, man. Where are you at on social media?
I'm on Instagram, and you can find me
Hmm.
at eric.wiese.creative. And then I also have my own website, which is just ericwiese.com. I don't check the emails that come through that as often, but the best way to get it, something to me is just DM me on Instagram, and I'm sort of on Tumblr once in a while, but Instagram's the place. I'm not on Facebook oh, actually, and you know what? I'm really enjoying Blue Sky.
Yeah,
That's cool. Yeah, I'm getting more and more into that. And that's also just eric.weiss.creative. So you can find me there. Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. And where can they
Give me a
find the
shout.
Peanuts special out?
They can find the Peanuts special on Apple Plus.
Mhm.
There might be screenings. We don't know. It's being talked. We'll see what happens.
God, I hope so.
There's
If
a
you do come to Orlando,
screening.
please.
Yeah, there's the screening that happened with Ben Folds in New York. That was on the 20th, and there might be some more later on down the line, but you never know. But we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. And all those links will be below in the descriptions, ladies and gentlemen. So you can point, click, go watch it and point, click, say, Eric, I love what you do, man. Well, like I said, this has been an absolute blast. He's been Eric. I've been Julian. This has been the Cartoon Chronicles podcast, and this has been another piece of your
Awesome.
childhood. Good night.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.